This week on Pep Talk.
You can have the best people on board, you can have all the money in the world, and you would still fail. Coca-Cola launching the new Coke no one liked, or Apple launching the Newton 20 years too early. My name is Yali Saar. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tailor Brands. With over 30 million businesses using the platform today, we provide a variety of tools that really help take an idea and launch it as a business within minutes. Eventually, everyone has to fail. I think that's the underlying true fact. And every organization, in order to succeed, has to develop a system that allows it to remain flexible and find paths to success.
Our mission is to help 10 million people start and grow a business. In Pep Talk, we interview industry-leading experts from around the world who share actionable know-how and life lessons. That's why we're excited to team up with GoDaddy to power Pep Talk. I have been using GoDaddy for years and would promote them on this podcast even if they didn't sponsor us. You can use their free website builder and start your online business at no cost, for example. You don't need lots of money to start a business if you leverage the tools at the Purposeful Project and GoDaddy. GoDaddy even help with naming a business. Check out the links in the podcast notes below to connect to GoDaddy tools. On today's podcast, we're going to talk about failure, why it's good. You've probably heard that saying, it's good to fail. Does it make sense? Is that true? Let's talk to someone that knows all about success and failure and learn from my guest today, Yali. Yali, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a real pleasure. Perhaps we could start off by telling the audience that don't know about you or your company a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Yali Saar. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tailor Brands. Tailor Brands is an online platform that helps people basically turn ideas into businesses. With over 30 million businesses using the platform today, we provide a variety of tools ranging from brand design to back office solutions that really help take an idea and launch it as a business within minutes. We help make the journey of starting a business into something that is simple and fun. We don't just give people tools to build businesses. We guide them through every step of the way, like an automated partner everyone needs when they start their own venture. I had some different roles in my past. I acted on national television and theater. I was a political spokesperson. I was a journalist for a while. I started my own nonprofit. And today I'm CEOing and running Tailor Brands.
I love for my audience to understand how you go from building such an incredible business like Tailor Brands. How do you go from, I read you were a Time Out news reporter to doing this? So give the audience some idea of your journey. What was the process?
Yeah, so I actually stumbled into the entrepreneurship world by accident, maybe. I started out as an actor. I never wanted to be an actor. I never planned on being an actor. I walked down the street and a caster caught me and asked me to if I want to come to an audition. And that eventually became a career. Which had a lot of fun kinks to it, but at some point I realized that I'm spending a lot of my time basically acting out other people's stories, and I was really set out to write my own story. So I started through this whole journey of entrepreneurship, and we started a lot of small ventures along the way. And, one of the last ventures that I started just before Tailor Brands was a venture called Raising the Bar. And the idea was really creating, an ecosystem for people that come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds to attain higher degrees. And we started that simply because we saw a problem that we wanted to solve. Tailor started way back as a logo maker. And we initially aimed to utilize AI, creative technology, to automate different aspects of business branding needs and really create the first automated branding agency. Over the years, Tailor's popularity grew. Today, we onboard roughly 700,000 new businesses every month. And with this increased opportunity, we realized that our mission was much bigger than simply providing logo design. A logo is just really the beginning of a business journey. And today we help really guide our users hand in hand with the mission of helping turn business creation into something that anybody can do.
700,000 new customers a month. That proves that this is needed in the world, I think. But it must have not been like that at the beginning. I mean, I'm reading back, you started this in 2015. Talk us about the early days of the business. How did you know this was definitely something people needed? How did you get it off the ground?
Yeah, so I didn't. If to be completely honest, my two good co-founders and myself, we were all good friends. And this whole thing started when we wanted to work with each other. We wanted to create something together. And we actually decided to take all of our savings and find the only apartment that we could rent in Brooklyn. We didn't have the entrepreneur's house back then. And it was this really crammy apartment that the JMZ just literally went out of the ground just outside of the apartment 8 times a day. We had to hold everything together. And we started testing different ideas together. And every day we would wake up and we would do an ideation session together. And we eventually worked on 3 parallel businesses. One was in the restaurant field. The other was in the real estate field. And the third one was Tailor. And if to be completely honest, Tailor wasn't my first pick. But as a CEO at the beginning of the business, I didn't have too much to do. I was going around knocking on doors, trying to get people to partner up with us for businesses that weren't fully launched yet. And I knocked door after door to try and get restaurants to the restaurant business and real estate agents for the real estate venture, and nobody would open those doors. And I went back to Tom, one of my co-founders, and I told him, listen, let's create a logo for this thing. Let's create business cards. Let's turn this into something that looks like there's more than just me in the background. And suddenly people started opening those doors. And I went back to Tom and I said, damn, I finally understand. I'm getting success with the other 2 ventures, but I'm understanding right now why is this idea so important. And this is really when we decided to focus on Tailor Brands and start scaling that. And we initially started as the idea was really just a B2B business. We were working with different printing partners. The idea was incorporating the technology we created in the backbone. And I think a lot of the mistakes that we've done along the way actually got us into the right course, got us to understand who are our customers. We initially thought that our customers were small businesses. As you kind of learn and understand the field, you realize that a lot of the people that are starting a business, they're not really small businesses. They're solopreneurs, they're founders. And we kind of realized how the solution should look like as we tried, failed, repeated until we kind of find the success that we have today.
There's so many things that I don't want my audience to miss in that overview of how you started. So I think some really crucial things that many people haven't heard before. Most people talking about starting a business say, I had a brilliant idea and then I did this. That's the normal story. But I think the reality is there's so many different ways to do it. And you just highlighted one. 3 friends, 2 people you get on personally really well with, sat down and said, let's work on something together. Let's make a business. And so everybody listening today could do that. You don't have to do it on your own. You don't have to have a brilliant idea all on your own. That's the first thing I don't want the audience to miss. The second thing I really love about what you just described there is it wasn't your first pick. This incredible company you've built that's so successful, it wasn't the first pick. And you had a real estate business that you tried to make happen. And you realized that your other business, the one you weren't initially so in love with, was the solution to the problem you were having with the other business you were working on. And so you almost discovered the reason that other business was important through a problem you had yourself starting another business. And that is the process I think that a lot of people don't necessarily follow. I really love that. And you found out who your customer is at the same time. And I think that's probably what then led to this incredible growth you had. So you use your own business to do the real estate business. Then what happened? You realized how powerful Tailor Brands could be as a service to companies. What did you do next?
If we're looking at kind of the process of Tailor Brands, I think one of the critical things that you just highlighted is, and for some people that have been through this business quite a lot, it might be quite obvious, but that identifying the true problem for the solution that you're trying to build is much more important than having a great idea for a solution, because the solution might change a lot of the times. I think that a lot of the times, especially as first-time founders, we focus a lot on the solution we are building. That could be a product that we're selling or a service that we are offering. For Tailor Brands, as I said, the first solution was to build out a logo maker. And we had an absolute success launching that product, and we scaled that pretty fast, doubling our revenues month after month. But despite that initial success, and maybe because of it, we never actually stopped, at least in the early days, and to really distill the problem our solution was solving. And that might seem mundane to some, but distilling that piece has a profound impact on a business success. The solution we built was a logo maker initially, but the problem that we were trying to solve was really helping people start their business easily. And this is the reason they used our solution, not to build a logo. The logo wasn't their end goal. The end goal was creating a business. And once we truly were able to distill the problem, understanding what the next set of solutions we would be offering to our users became much easier and really allowed Tailor Brands to grow tenfold. If before we had to continuously debate what it is that we need to build out next, once we distilled the problem, it was really a no-brainer. And I think that distilling the problem allowed us to turn Tailor Brands from a logo maker into a one-stop shop or a small business operating system. And that allows our system to create, or allows our users to create a logo, set up their online presence, social presence, open up their business. Now, I think that this whole process didn't really happen with too much intention at first. And this brings me to kind of maybe the second point that was really critical in the success of Tailor Brands. And that was using, a reverse engineering strategy to chart our path to success. A lot of people think that, they need to tackle a business problem linearly, meaning you think about your goal and then you immediately think about what your first step to attaining that goal. But I think that a lot of the smartest business leaders I've encountered actually use a reverse engineering strategy to plan their path to success. This means that you kind of work backwards from your end goal and you plan your step backwards in order to make sure that you don't miss anything that you need to do along the way. I'll give you an example. Let's say my goal is to go and get ice cream. Walking linearly, the first thing I might do is to get out and start working towards the ice cream store. But then I might get there and realize I didn't take any money with me and I don't have an open tab. Working backwards from your goal means that you calculate the last thing you need to do before getting that ice cream is paying for it. One step backwards, you'll need to make sure that you have cash. And one step before that, you'll need to get your wallet. And this is an oversimplified example, but in real life, there are many different steps that you need to take. Maybe you're picking up ice cream for a friend, and maybe you need to talk with them before going to the store and finding out which flavor that they want. And the whole purpose of using this reverse engineering strategy is getting you from point A to point Z with as little steps as possible. So if you're building your business and your next big milestone is the goal, let's say that you want to take a loan or you want to go fundraise. So in order to qualify for that, you will need to, do a certain number of steps. You can't think about building a business as if you're going on a stroll. You need to think about it as if you're going on an expedition to what is usually kind of an uncharted territory. And you might survive solely on having great business instincts, but you'll really be able to increase your odds if you plan as much as you can. So I think at some point after we kind of launched the initial logo design platform, and we started seeing that traction, we stopped and we started planning ahead and trying to figure out what is our kind of end goal and where do we need to get, and start kind of building the steps backwards from there.
It's such a great insight, both the points you're making there. I don't want people to miss this. This is so important. What is your true problem? People do misunderstand that when they're trying to figure out what their business does. I interviewed Ben Francis, who's the founder of Gymshark, now a $3 billion company here in the UK. And he basically said everyone else was making clothes, nice clothes. He wasn't making nice clothes. He was making things that made people feel comfortable in the gym. It's just going that one level down into what problem you're actually solving for people, because there's plenty of people making nice clothes. So, so that's so important. I think the reverse engineering process is also genius. And again, a lot of the time, I say to people, if you want more luck in life, know your destination, because if you won't know that you're lucky. You won't even realize it because you don't know where you're going. And the analogy around ice cream, by the way, makes me want ice cream. And I'm sure everybody listening now wants ice cream. But that whole concept is just brilliant. Because the other thing I think it does, and again, I don't want people to miss this, is if you know where you're going, you can inspire brilliant people to join you on that journey. Whereas if you're just heading off somewhere, again, using your analogy, if we're just going out for a while, you want to come? I'm all right. But I'm going out for ice cream. You want to come? Oh, yes. So it's absolute gold what you just said there. I don't want people to miss it. I just want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Tailor Brands, for supporting this podcast and entrepreneurs. Tailor Brands are aligned with our mission to help you start and grow a business and already empower millions of customers around the world to kickstart their business. With their AI-driven one-stop shop for aspiring small business owners with everything you need to jumpstart your business, such as a logo maker, business mailbox, online and physical business cards, printed merchandise, social media tools, and so much more. To find out more about Tailor Brands and how they can help you, click the link below and get 40% off your first order using the code PEP. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
I agree completely, and I think that, I like to remember something I call the 4 Cs. When you go into that reverse engineering psychology. And the first one is a compass, meaning that you know what your goal is and where you're headed. The second thing is your course, meaning that you map out, like we discussed, step by step. The third one, as you said, is company, meaning what are the resources and who are the people you need to complete each step of that journey, and being able to get them on board because you know where you're going. And the fourth one, which a lot of people, tend to miss out on, is the curses, meaning that what are the possible problems that you will encounter in each step along the way, and you have some kind of a backup plan in case you get to each one of these points.
Well, if you missed that, folks, we'll put that in the notes down below. 4 Cs sounds like the beginning of a great book, and very, very useful. I guess let's talk about failure for a second, because when I listen to your story and what you've just described there, it feels like, and maybe to my listeners listening, you go and focus on Tailor Brands. It now has 700,000 monthly new users, 30 million customers taking advantage of the platform. So that's it. You started it, you're a big success, but I know you have a philosophy around failure. So talk us through a little bit about that, about the journey that you've been on to build this company.
Yeah, so, I think that a lot of people, they open up the papers and they see a lot of the success that is usually detailed in articles, because we usually write about success and not about the failure portions. I like to say there's probably a million biographies about success. There's only one that I found about failure. And starting a business is tough. You can have the best people on board, you can have all the money in the world, and you would still fail. There's, numerous examples of that. And one of the main reasons is that most businesses have elements that they can't correctly predict when they start building the business. Some businesses meet breakstone earlier and join the statistics of businesses failing within the first year. And some people and some businesses meet it later in their lifetime, but everyone fails. Eventually, everyone has to fail. I think that's the underlying true fact. And every organization, in order to succeed, has to develop a system that allows it to remain flexible and learn from these failures and find paths to success. In other words, I like to call it creating a fail-safe environment in an organization. Not an environment that is safe of failure, but an environment that makes failing safer. Meaning that you can't build your business with the mindset of saying, okay, this is my only path and I'm not going to fail along the way. It's these types of environment that allow startups to pivot, or huge corporation proceed after mega failures, like Coca-Cola launching the new Coke no one liked, or Apple launching the Newton 20 years too early. Now, I think that the value of creating this fail-safe mentality within an organization allows you to A, make failing less deadly, and B, promote innovation. So this is something that we focus a lot on Tailor Brands. How can we, not just as founders or the CEO of the company, feel comfortable failing within the organization, but create a whole environment throughout that allows everybody in the organization feel as if they can fail, they can try, they can repeat that whole structure until they find the right path to success.
And how do you manage failure as an organization that has a lot of people working in it? Of course, we hear stories about banks that have rogue traders, for example, that perhaps they gave them too much freedom to fail. Is there an innovation dilemma element there? How do you manage that? Do you compartmentalize it?
So the first thing that I did when I wanted to figure out how can I create this environment is I went ahead and asked myself, why was I able to create a fail-safe environment for myself when I was just starting Tailor Brands, right? And when I thought about that question, I came up with, five to six main reasons. The first one is I understood the big picture of what I'm trying to accomplish. So I could take calculated risks. I knew where I can fail and where I can't. The second thing is I had skin in the game. I had something to gain from winning. The third thing was I believed my fate was in my hands. And you just mentioned that autonomy. Autonomy on its own is not enough if you don't create a mindset for people that they can impact their path to success. That even, the market is crashing, you have competitors, you always have the ball in your hand and decide where you're going to take it from there. And I think, 4 and 5 is I didn't need to cover up for my mistakes. I had checks and balances. And then I went ahead and I tried to recreate the same environment in Tailor Brands. So I created transparency for people to understand what success means in a big picture context. I didn't just give them their goals and said, disregard the rest. I wanted them to be able to evaluate where they can take calculated risks versus the entire organization. Until today, all the data in Tailor Brands is available for everyone in the organization. The second thing is we provided incentive for people to win. And this is not just through options and salaries, right? People want to be able to celebrate their own success. People are a lot of times competitive by nature. And we created, bi-weekly meetings in which these different teams in the company can present their success. They come there and kind of like different tribes showcasing what they did in the last 2 weeks. We provided autonomy for people by basically segmenting the entire company into very small startups. So Tailor Brands today is a company, but within that company, we have a lot of small companies that we call brands. Each of them is in charge of different elements in the product itself, but they have complete freedom to make their decisions within that unit. And I think, last but not least, I made it socially acceptable to admit mistakes. No one with skin in the game ever feels truly safe failing, but without a clear understanding that failing is a crucial part of the way, you don't learn anything from your mistakes. So, I like to showcase the mistakes that I've done, and I've done a ton of mistakes throughout the lifetime of Tailor. So every one of these bi-weekly meetings, I don't just tell people to showcase the mistakes that they've done. I also like to kind of put at the forefront the mistakes that I've been doing in the last 2 weeks, month, or few years beforehand.
I love the culture development piece that you're discussing there. Again, this doesn't get talked about enough. Like you say, all the headlines about how much money people have raised and how successful everybody is, but no one really talks about the fact that they managed to do that because they failed many times previously. I also really love the point that you just made about You mentioned Newton for my young listeners listening. You might need to go Google this, but they were way ahead of their time developing technology. So they tried it and it failed, but it turns out they should have tried again and again and again, failed again and again and again, because eventually they would have been the right timing. So they were early, they were too early. So that's the interesting thing about learning, you just said there, from failure, learning the right lessons from failure as opposed to the wrong lessons. So Newton maybe made the wrong assumption. Oh, people don't want this. What they didn't realize is, oh no, what we really mean is there's not enough broadband acceptance in the market yet to make this work properly.
And Newton's technology, by the way, is still being used in a lot of different products today. And a lot is true for a lot of other failures, right? We have Google Plus. They closed down that service after a long time. They've tried to make it work. Google Glass, Project Loon, I think, just closed down. You have Facebook with Facebook credits. You have the Amazon Fire Phone. I think Netflix, which, they had the Quister or something like that. They had a service that they tried to launch at some point.
You're taking me back now. I'm suddenly feeling old. A lot of my listeners might not even know Google Plus. You're going to have to Google what Google Plus is.
What Google Plus
social
is.
Network that
Meta.
failed, yeah.
So I think that, a lot of times we like to talk about the statistics that 9 out of 10 businesses fail, right? But 9 out of 10 ideas fail. And it's not just about finding, and this goes back to the focus of a problem rather than the solution, right? Don't focus on the solution. The solution, you might end up failing with that solution. You might end up failing with the next 8 solutions that you bring onto the table. But you need to create an environment in which you feel very confident in the problem that you're trying to solve, and then be able to learn and reiterate on the solutions until you find the right one.
So true. Airbnb folks said many times, we failed 9 times before we succeeded. They launched that site 9 times and no one used it, right? So, there's something in that. Is the persistence point. Again, I think what you were saying earlier, the persistence point is so crucial. I want to have you back on the podcast. We promise our listeners we won't take up too much of their time. I think you have taught us about failure. You've given us some insights on how to innovate inside our businesses, and I feel inspired. I'm personally very grateful that you have succeeded for lots of reasons. First of all, you built a business that helps people start and grow a company. If you can't find a job, you can create one for yourself thanks to tools like yours. So I'm really grateful. And I'm really, really grateful that you're also sponsoring this podcast and supporting our mission to help millions of people start and grow a business. And so your success, you many times failing, has now helped us ensure that we can do what we do. So I thank you for that butterfly effect and for the support that you give the entrepreneurial community.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for having me.
Real pleasure. Thank you for listening to our podcast today, and I hope you got value from it. Please feel free to follow us on any of our social media channels, and if you have any questions about business, ask us. We will help you. Again, we want to thank our sponsor, GoDaddy, for supporting this podcast. From naming your business and buying a domain name to building a website for free, GoDaddy has you covered. GoDaddy provides us entrepreneurs with all the help and tools we need to grow a business online. You're not alone, entrepreneurs. See you in the next one.